Welcome to the latest First Voice podcast, brought to you by First Voice magazine, the official flagship magazine of the Federation of Small Businesses and the go-to podcast for news, tips and important information for small businesses. My name's John Watkins, and for this episode, I'm pleased to say we're joined by FSB's Craig Beaumont, who will set out what was and what wasn't in the 2021 budget for small businesses. Chancellor Rishi Sunak's 2021 budget was undoubtedly a key one for small businesses and the self-employed, as many of you continue to battle your way through the COVID-19 lockdown restrictions and adjust to life after the Brexit transition period. So for the next 20 minutes or so, Craig and I will pick through the budget to pull out the announcements that are important to you and discuss exactly what they mean. Craig, welcome and thanks for joining us.
Hi, John. Thanks for having me.
Pleasure. Listen, there's stats to get through, so I thought we'd go straight into what it all means. But I thought a good place to start was to sort of gauge FSB's overall response to the budget. I mean, was this a good one for small businesses?
So there's kind of two sides to a budget. One is the kind of economic forecast, what's really happening out there, what has happened, what will happen. And then the second is the measures that the Chancellor takes. So if you actually look at the economic scenario, there's actually quite a lot of optimism now coming in. The economy will be back to its 29 peak by mid next year, which is a lot sooner than expected. We'll see growth over the next quarter and into the next year, perhaps of up to 7%, which in a historic sense is huge. But of course, that follows the huge contraction and the recession that we've had. So it's not like this is, overwhelmingly a good thing. It's a reaction, a response to a very difficult time for our members and the economy. And this is all thanks to the vaccine, So suddenly you've got an unlock process. You've got, you'll know all your dates now from March, April, May and June, even though they might step back a bit. But there's a real sense that optimism is rising. 70% of small businesses are open and active, and that's growing. 2/3 think they're back to 100% of their normal trade, and perhaps even as soon as the end of the year. And unemployment is not going to be as bad as people thought. So the prediction was it would be 12% unemployment peak rate, and that will now fall to perhaps about 6.5%, and it's currently at 5.1. So that's nearly 2 million people who won't be unemployed. And I said this is all positive, but at the same time, to get to that positivity, you've got to survive this crisis. So just looking at the measures, overall, I'd say it's a spend now, tax later budget. Loads of expenditure on COVID support, especially for us, to get us through this final kind of phase of the crisis. COVID may be with us for a lot longer, of course, but in terms of, a full lockdown, everyone not being able to do their business, that will hopefully come to an end. And that money will keep us going. So, in a couple of years' time, to pay for that, the tax burden is going to rise. And what any small business owner knows, the further out the date, the more you can adapt. So there is actually quite a lot of chatter this morning with government and with the think tanks and in policy world of, are those dates really fixed? So having announced this big tax burden rise on corporation tax, will it actually happen, or will it happen quite as much? And we don't know, is the honest answer. But importantly for us, a lot of the expenditure for us is actually for us, for small businesses and the self-employed. And then from the tax, we've been sheltered from much of the tax increases. So yeah, overall, I'd say yes, a pro-small business budget. Lots of spending and then a tax rise, but the tax rise we're protected from.
Yeah, definitely cause for optimism, and it certainly feels like things are going in the right direction finally for small businesses. There's always some key points for discussion in the detail, though. Can we go through some of the key announcements for small businesses and what they're likely to mean for members on a day-to-day basis?
Great. Yeah. I mean, actually, there was so much. I'm going to rattle through these, but the first one is the furlough scheme being extended to June. This is, our members rely on this to pay their staff if their business is inactive. So it's helped, 1 million small employers have used this scheme, and we know they're still disproportionately using it. And that will continue all the way through till September. It won't be full through to September, because in July, employer cost will rise to 10%. So you'll need to pay 10% of your salaries, of the salary for these furloughed workers. And then you also have to pay pensions and employer NICs on top of that. So it's about 14%. And then in August, that will rise to 20% of the costs, which if you add in the pensions and NICs, it comes out to about 23%. But that is still weaning people off using furlough, and there is still support all the way through to September. And that was really important to us because while in June, effectively, at the moment, all the restrictions on doing business, all the main ones should have gone. We may need to have some small things that continue, but that's the plan. And the worry we had was that Treasury would remove all support by that point, and they have not done that. So that's really good. The second one, which is the second kind of flagship scheme, is the self-employment scheme. And what a campaign that FSB has led right from the front has been to get access to what's called the Self-Employment Income Support Grant 4 to the newly self-employed. So those are people with a 1920 tax return, but they didn't have an 1819 one. And that was the minimum requirement for taking part. So they lost the first 3 grants. And this is really sad for us because the self-employment scheme only exists because FSB went in after furlough and fought to make sure that self-employed got support. So this scheme we're really proud of, and this expansion to 600,000 newly self-employed people, we need to, make sure that they're safely into the scheme. But that's the plan, and there's serious credit is due for that. There's also going to be a SAYS Grant 5. So there are some issues here with dates because people applied for Grant 3 in November, and they won't be able to apply for Grant 4 until next month. So that's a bit of a gap. And then Grant 5, of course, will be probably towards September time. But overall, that is well over £30 billion of money to 2.7 million people who are self-employed. And that has kept so many people going. And it's so important that's been extended, again, way past June. Some of these things were briefed out, of course, before the budget. So I'm not, these are not things that some of them were known on the budget day, but some of them were known before. So a couple of us that were known before were the new set of cash grants, which we did fight for, about £5 billion worth that will go to shops, restaurants, bars, hotels, gyms, hairdressers, personal care businesses. And that's really, really positive because it includes a slug of money also for suppliers. And these are discretionary grants through local authorities. Now, local authorities have been a bit slow in getting the first slug of money out. So now FSB at every level is going to their local authority and saying, come on, get out the money out the door. You've had it since November, let's go. And that will help, 700,000 businesses to get over through to the end of June and beyond. And if you probably don't remember, but right at the very start, we had £10,000 cash grants to all small businesses in the business rate system. I mean, these grants range from, 4 and 5 grand to about 18 grand. So it's a mix. But it's quite a broad group. And then you've got the supply chain in there as well. One big thing we were worried about was business rates. So the business rates, 100% relief for a number of businesses in retail, hospitality and leisure was due to expire. Now, we do have an extension. We wanted 100%, obviously wanted 100% for the year. We've got 100% for a period of time for about 3 months. And then it's 2/3 off all the way through to April next year. And they've also added in nurseries, which is really important for us. We've got a number of nurseries in membership. And as a sector, we're very concerned that they are, really up against it in their cash reserves and how they operate in England. So that's really, really good. There's also some kind of smaller things as well that have been continued, like if you have a member of staff that's off for 2 weeks, you can get a sick pay rebate. Now, we used to have this years ago, and we managed to get it back for COVID. And we're hoping that will stay permanently. Now, of course, it possibly won't. We're going to have to go in and fight for this one. But that has been extended through all the way into the summer. And then a couple of smaller things, which are if you pay corporation tax, and a number of people don't pay corporation tax, but if you do, you are now able to carry forward your losses for tax purposes for up to 3 years. So that's all the support mechanisms, if you like. It's a really good picture. It's a lot of money. And there are other things as well, but I thought that's probably a good place to start.
Yeah, that's brilliant. And, there's a lot of positivity there. There's a lot of support for businesses as they go through this continued period of disruption and difficulty, and some other things to sort of help them come out the other side as well. I noticed the increased apprenticeship funding was one, something that presumably we see as a positive as well.
Yes, I mean, there's a second category in my mind is, so having done that money to help people survive, there's almost like a second pot of things that there's money to encourage good things.
Yeah.
I've got a snappier way of saying that, but money to encourage good things. So that's increasing £3,000 for any apprenticeship you take on. So that's an employer incentive. Also 40,000 traineeships, which are work placements. And there's about, I think it's 40,000 of those, that's £126 million. An employer gets £1,000 for that. So a slight worry we have on the apprenticeships money is that increase of money is only available until September. So that's only 6 months. So, I mean, it's good, but it's time limited. And what we'll now be looking at is, well, if that works, because we need to get apprenticeship starts up, then we need to extend. But there's money for other things as well. There's something called Help to Grow. In fact, it has two halves to this program, Help to Grow Management and Help to Grow Digital. And the first one is a set of MBA-style training courses in business schools for about 30,000 small businesses to be mentored and learn about all the kind of management skills you need. Because we do worry that there's not quite enough, management skills and leadership skills within small businesses, and that would really help. Help to Grow Digital, that should help out another 100,000 small businesses to get digital skills advice, but also 50% off software. So if you're a small business moving things up to the cloud for the first time, there will now be a route for you to get some money to help you do that. And that's really good. We've told the government, look, stop talking about productivity as this kind of esoteric policy thing. Don't tell small businesses they're unproductive or there's this long tail of unproductive firms. That's not a nice way to deal with it. What you should do is say, look, here's something that can help you and here's some money on the table. And that's what they've done. So both these schemes look really, really positive. A couple of other smaller ones in this bucket, I'd say, are the stamp duty extension. So that's helping the housing market and the construction industry, where we have loads of members in both of these. It helps them to continue because it's kept that market going. Now that will now be extended in full to June, this kind of stamp duty exemption, and it will taper through to September. Add on that a bit of help for mortgages, 95% mortgages, and you've kind of got a little package for that whole sector, which should help. And then finally, I'd probably come back to the 5% VAT rate for hospitality and tourism. We've got so many members in this industry, and that 5% rate has been in there, but it's been there while hospitality is effectively being closed, except for that one period in the summer in Eat Out to Help Out time. So we wanted that extended, and it's not been extended. So it's not only been extended to September, but there's also a 12.5% rate and through till March. Now, members love this, and now they'll be able to trade and therefore benefit from it. And that's really important.
That's brilliant, Craig. Stacks of really positive messages there. Lots to help businesses go through the current period and then come out the other side and hopefully grow and prosper from there. Was there anything in the budget that you would like to have seen but didn't? Was there anything that we feel like was missing?
Yeah, I mean, there was very little on job creation. It was very weak on job creation, surprisingly weak. So this was for me the kind of the big red spot. If there was anything this chancellor should be doing on jobs, yes, you should. Your first thing you should do is about protecting jobs, for stopping people becoming unemployed. But you should also look at the recovery. How do you create jobs? How does a small business get encouraged to add an extra person to the team or take on, if you're a sole trader, take on your first employee? It's very expensive due to employer national insurance to create these jobs. We've removed some of that cost after the election with the employment allowance, which removes the first kind of £4,000 worth off that bill. But we need more. And they've kind of accepted that in principle in a few places, like from next month, when you take on a veteran, you won't pay national insurance. If you're in one of these free ports that were announced yesterday, all around the country, East Midlands, Felixstowe, Liverpool, Teesside, etc., when you create a job in there, you won't be paying national insurance. So they've kind of accepted the point, but they haven't then taken the action. And a kind of aligned to that is something that we had achieved before, which was the job retention bonus. And this was a payment, a small payment to any employer that kept a furloughed employee in work in February time after the first scheme was due to end in October time. So it's basically a reward that says, look, thank you for keeping this person on. For many small businesses, that money was the only guaranteed revenue they had in the spring. So when it was cancelled, that was a very sad day, but it was cancelled for a good reason, and that was because furlough was continuing. Now that we've got an end date for full furlough, we expected the job retention bonus to be brought back, and it wasn't there. And we're now trying to explore whether it's actually gone full stop or whether it's just not been announced yet, and we're not sure yet.
Yeah, good to know. And you talked a little bit at the beginning there around sort of campaigning for self-employment support, FSB's involvement in other calls to the government throughout this pandemic to help get measures and funding and support put in place. Looking a bit longer term, beyond the initial fallout of Budget 2021, what are you guys looking for from the government? What are you calling for at the moment in terms of support from government?
Well, actually, there's one thing I forgot to mention that was missing also, which was a massive project on the Directors' Income Support Scheme. So just before that, if it's okay just to say that. Yep. I mean, we were locked in meetings with Treasury over the last few months. The last one was on Monday before the budget, right up until the end, trying to overcome the barriers in place of, you can't get directors' dividends can't be used for income because the government can't separate dividends from income as opposed to investment, and they don't want to fund people's investment, which is right. So we found a way around it, created a scheme, and we were going in and fighting for it right up until the end. Huge campaign, lots of policy work, loads of collaboration with Forgotten Limited that have been brilliant working with us on this. Mm-hmm. The ACCA and an expert called Rebecca Seeley-Harris. And that was really good, but it didn't make it. It didn't get across the line. And that's, it's actually quite upsetting because we've seen the impact of that lack of support has been huge. So they've been paying the taxes like everybody else, and we found a way to help them, and the government hasn't gone for it. They've not had a penny in income support. They will benefit a bit from, the furlough scheme for their employees. That was guaranteed income for them. They will benefit from some of the other measures in the budget more broadly, but they should have got support. FSB was right there, and I just wanted to say that we need to look people in the eye and say we did everything we could, and we genuinely have. So there's no regrets that we didn't do enough. That for me was really important. In terms of going forward, will this group get support? Well, I struggle to see if the government hasn't agreed it now. I struggle to see if they'll agree it later. But we will strategise and we'll work to see if there's a chance. On other things, we've got a major date coming up on the 23rd of March, which is becoming known as Tax Day, when the government's going to come out with lots of consultations on the future of the tax system. So some of the difficult decisions, which, we're expecting talk of national insurance rise on the self-employed and changes to capital gains tax and entrepreneurs relief, which they renamed business asset disposal relief to make it easier to abolish. We are fighting for these, and we'll continue to fight to make sure they're not got rid of. But there's a risk there. So we are going to be communicating to the government, you've just agreed to move the tax burden to the highest it's been since, the 1960s, since Roy Jenkins was chancellor. So we don't want more tax rises. And then, of course, we've got the autumn budget coming up as well. One bit that was also missing that will be coming forward in the next few months is the fundamental business rates review. And that's a real opportunity. The government promised us it will be a downward review, as in we'll look to reduce the burden. And of course, on job creation, we're going to really put rockets under that now because the government didn't go forward with any measures. So they need ideas. We're going to come up with some. And then finally, I'd probably ally to that a kind of move on startups. We've got a great small business community, but there is always churn and change. And what we need to see is a new generation of entrepreneurs come forward. So, I have a great salaried job and I really love working with FSB. But at some stage, I should be encouraged to go out and start a business like all the members of FSB do. So we need to see kind of moves to really boost the startup loans system and the new enterprise allowance so that startups really, really can start to motor and everyone decides that actually the economy is looking up. I want to start a business. And of course, hopefully join FSB.
Yeah, brilliant. And startups for so long have been, touted as the future of economic growth in this country. So we certainly hope that happens and proves to be the case. Craig, that's such a brilliant, thorough roundup of a really complex issue and all of the issues to come out of the budget 2021. So thank you so much for sharing those with us. Thanks also to our audience for listening. Please do remember to subscribe to the First Voice podcast to receive regular updates and guidance on other big issues affecting small businesses. And of course, please do visit firstvoice.fsb.org.uk for plenty more small business content. Many thanks.